In this recording, we're going to discuss an introduction to the immune system. We have two types of immunity. First, we have an innate or non-specific immunity that responds to all pathogens in the same way. So it doesn't matter if it's a bacteria, a virus, the reaction is the same. This is the dominant response for the first 12 hours of our exposure to the pathogen. And then we have an adaptive immunity, which is sometimes called an acquired or a specific immunity. This responds to antigens individually, so each different type of antigen will get a different response. We have two subcategories of your adaptive immunity. Cell-mediated immunity comes from your T lymphocytes, and your antibody-mediated immunity comes from your B cells and antibodies. And then your antibody-mediated is sometimes called your humoral immunity. So just in case you hear that term. This immunity takes between 3 to 5 days to mount a response, but once it really kicks into high gear, it becomes your dominant response for destroying the pathogens that we are exposed to. We have 3 lines of defense to help prevent or destroy pathogens and then infections. First line of defense we are super familiar with because this includes your cutaneous membranes and your mucous membranes. Your cutaneous membrane is your skin, so we're definitely familiar with that one. Your second line of defense is the innate immunity that we just mentioned, and the third line of defense is your adaptive immunity that we just mentioned. And we'll go in a little bit more detail for all 3 of these lines of defenses. So your first line of defense is your skin. Okay, we mentioned that was your cutaneous membrane. In addition to just being a general barrier, so as long as your skin is nice and intact, it's difficult for pathogens to get inside of our body through our skin. But in addition to that, your skin also secretes sebum, also known as oil, and it's slightly acidic. And that slight acidic environment for some pathogens is enough of a harsh environment to just outright kill them. Now, your mucosal membranes, your mucous membranes, line passageways inside of your body that open to the outside of your body. So your respiratory tract, your GI tract, and your genitourinary tracts. Instead of secreting sebum, these are going to secrete mucus instead, and that should make sense, your mucous membranes. The mucousy environment is also unfavorable to a lot of bacteria, and then your stomach in particular secretes really strong hydrochloric acid, and that's pretty good at destroying a lot of pathogens as well. Now, if a pathogen gets by our first line of defense, our second line of defense comes into play. This is our innate immunity, that non-specific immunity. We have both granulocyte and agranulocytes getting involved. We've got neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, monocytes, which turn into macrophages. All of those are going to respond in the same way regardless of what the pathogen is. The same goes for mast cells, natural killer cells, dendritic cells, and cytokines. Remember, the innate is the non-specific, so it doesn't really matter what's causing us problems, the reactions are going to be the same. Now, if we need a more specific response, we're going to have to go to that third line of defense, that adaptive immunity. This is where your B cells and your T cells come into play. Those B cells will then also produce antibodies. Notice we have cytokines and dendritic cells here as well. These show up in both the second and third line of defense. Cytokines are proteins that assist in activating parts of your immune system, and dendritic cells also play multiple roles in helping activate various cells in your immune system. So they get to play a part in second and third line of defense.